And we're live. That's right, folks. You are back. You have come back for another episode of The Podcaster Nation. This is the show that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters. And that's right, it's done by podcasters. And today, I know it's going to come as a shock to you, but we have as one of our guests a podcaster. That's right. That's what we do here. Folks, thank you so much for all of the support. This project is going beautifully. I love having all of you folks on here. I really do love you guys. We've had a chance to meet the most interesting folks. Today is no exception. This lady's already wonderful. I've talked to her for 5 minutes. I can't wait to hear more. You folks have already made this podcast a success, and we have just barely scratched the surface. So thank you. Keep rocking, keep rolling. This is the podcast where the rising tide raises all ships. So as we get going, I want to introduce you today to a very unique guest. I've never talked to somebody in her field before. Please welcome Laura Ordile from the Change Gang podcast. Welcome. How you doing, Laura?
I'm doing well. Thanks. Thanks for having me here.
So, hypnotist, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
your line of work. Got it.
Among other things. Yes. Yes.
Okay. I've never actually, I mean, we've all seen hypnotists on TV. We've all, we know a little bit about the pop culture version of what it really is. I had a chance to listen to some of your stuff on your podcast. Um, I like the fact that you immediately addressed, hey, this is not what you've seen on stage. This is how it works. Um, Tell everybody a little bit about first, a little bit about what your podcast is and kind of like what you're about.
My podcast, The Change Gang, I put together because change can be hard for people, but we all need change. We all want change, and sometimes we get stuck in that wanting of the change and it not happening. And when I originally started it, I just wanted to bring some things together to help people to know that there's a little bit of a process through change, what to expect when you're going through it, and how come you get stuck, and how to move beyond that. And I also say in it that I love to bring together a little bit of the practical and the woo, and help you hold on to your sanity as you go down the road of that change, because sometimes it gets a little crazy when you're trying to do the things that you want to do for yourself. So that's a little bit about my show. That's me. And there's a lot of individual episodes. Then I did get finally brave at one point and started talking to other people. And so there's a lot of those. And now it's kind of a good mix of both, I think. So there's a lot of different choices out there in the episodes. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about the show.
Well, now how long? I have so many questions about this. So let's start with how long have you been doing the podcast?
I think it's right at 2 years. I was
Okay,
just trying to figure out the date. I think it's about two
about
years.
2 years.
And yeah.
And you have how many episodes out?
Monday it'll be 173 episodes. So
That
by the
is
time this is out,
magnificent.
170. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I mean, congratulations. Thank you for sharing that with us. That is awesome. That's just a huge accomplishment for the world of podcasting. I love seeing people succeed and have that kind of life on the channel. It's beautiful. So congrats to that. I'm dying to know how does somebody get into this line of work? What's your background? Who's Laura? What pulls you into this way of serving the way that you do, and what's your purpose?
Ooh, big questions, big
Yeah,
questions.
big questions.
I I was in corporate for about 23 years. I had just left corporate a couple of years ago. But the whole time I was in corporate, I was always kind of poking around in other stuff, wanting to do other stuff, keeping my mind busy. And I have that woo side that I talked about a little bit. So I stepped into working into in intuition a very, very long time ago, and I would do intuitive readings and things like that. Through that came astrology as well. And when I stepped into astrology, it kind of amazed me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is pretty cool stuff, because I choose to look at the practical side of it too. How can it help someone? How can it be useful? And somehow, so I was in this woo world for a good time, and I thought, I need to add something a little more practical. I really want something, that can change people and not just give them information. And so for me, the practical was stepping into hypnosis. People laugh at me for that, but that was my practical.
Okay.
And I don't even remember, things come up and you start noticing things and kind of going, "Oh, that's interesting." And that was what happened with hypnosis. And I stumbled across someone who in my little bubble happened to do hypnosis, and I thought, "Oh my goodness." And he just happened to be putting hypnosis school together. It was right before the whole world change, and so I thought, well, okay, I'm gonna do that. And when he talked about it, there were things in it that he talked about that I found incredibly important, and some of that had to do with working with people in the military and in the police in situations like that, because oftentimes there's people who can't talk about some of the things that they've been through, and that kind of spilled over into a lot of people don't want to talk about the things that they've been through, and I get that. I totally get that. And so the way that he was talking to me about hypnosis was what they call, quote unquote, here's a little verbiage, but it's content free, which basically means you don't have to tell me what your issue is. You don't have to tell me about growing up, what your mother did to you, what, your brother did. I don't need to know all of that. If you want to share that with me, awesome. But I don't have to know those things to help you get through what you're going through, to help you move through, clear the things, kind of hit that reset button so that you get where you want to go and you don't have the things going on inside you that you no longer want. So that was a key thing in moving into hypnosis for me. And I thought, wow, that would be incredible because I'm from a military family. And so I'm very aware of some of the difficulties that come up from service and so many things. And I have police presence in my family as well. People serve in all different areas. And
Hmm.
so that was just a kind of a heart part for me that I wanted to have in there and be able to help those people. And through that, I've really learned that it's not just about somebody who has had service and might have quote unquote PTSD or whatever other label that they want to put on someone. It's about the symptoms that people are experiencing. And so many of us have things going on in our life that we just think, that's just part of life. I can't sleep. I have migraines. I have IBS. I have these looping thoughts in my brain. I have all these things that are going on. Well, those are you saying that's a part of you, your body telling you, hey, we might need to have a little fix going on. We might need something adjusted and changed. And so that's something that I can do. And I mean, if you get me talking, we will be here for a while, going into how the subconscious works and why it works and all these fun things about it. But that's the main reason that I kind of stepped into hypnosis and to see the changes in people. I worked with someone who we sat down. I kind of have a little checklist I go through. And she had 17 things going on in her, big things like panic attacks, hypervigilance, IBS, all of these things that were going on in her life. And by the time we got through the program that I do, which at that point was only 6 weeks, 6 to 7 weeks, and we hit that 6 week, and she said, I don't, I don't know what's happened, but it's gone. It's gone. And we had either cleared or drastically reduced, and it was still clearing all of those 17 symptoms. And to me, that's like magic. It's just like, oh my goodness,
That's
how do you
wild.
not,
Yeah.
how do you not do that? So that's the hypnosis train for me right there.
So, I mean, what you're talking about, and some of these things that you're the labels, so to speak, and the things that you're referring to right now, these are things that are considered, by contemporary medicine anyway, as conditions that they treat then. And what you're saying is you view them as symptoms of something that's going on underneath
Yeah.
subconsciously. That's fascinating as all get out. Okay. I didn't even know that first responders and vets went through this kind of thing with hypnosis. I had no idea it was that mainstream.
Oh yeah, it's actually been approved by oh my goodness, I don't have that record in front of me right now, but it's been like by the my goodness, the big medical people, American Medical Association, National Health,
Wow.
those type
Okay.
of places. It's like the late 1950s or 60s, and it's actually recommended or a part of the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic approves of it as well. So it's not just
Wow.
uh, hocus pocus out there that, it's not the stage stuff. Watch my watch.
Right.
And no, it's really clinically helpful and is an amazing thing that happens for people. And they do go through it. And there was some work done way back after one of the world wars, and they did a lot of work with what they called shell shock then. And these people got better. They got better. And they actually figured out some of the things that were happening in these people's lives that kind of predisposed them to that situation of coming out of it after, having experienced these things. And so it kind of caused some issues though, because there were a lot of people that had kind of these markers in their life and they needed the draft and they needed the people. And so they kind of turned that little
Oh,
thing off.
that wasn't convenient.
'Cause they needed what they needed.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't do it by using those filters. And so it kind of got pushed to the side and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about that anymore, which happens in society, unfortunately. Even when it's a good thing, it gets sometimes shut down. And that's what happened with hypnosis. But I think it's kind of come back a lot. And with the approval of like the Mayo and the other associations, it's very, very useful because
Wow.
sometimes there's things that happen that we don't remember. Could have been something that started the chain of events when you're a year and a half old, 2 years old. Uh, as simple as your parents having a big argument over something, but there's a little part of you at that 2-year-old mark that sees that as a really big deal. And it kind of puts a little anchor in you and goes, oh, okay, I'm going to protect you. And that's what your subconscious does. It comes out and protects you. And so it comes out and kind of creates this little armored version of you and says, I've got you. And you move forward. And then that happens down the line. It's kind of like those little dolls. You have little tiny, the dolls that fit in dolls that fit in dolls. You've got those little
Right.
versions of yourself inside you. And some of them get stuck in those traumas and they send out signals. We need help. Come help us. And if you think about, I use two different analogies or metaphors here, and whether you like dogs or kids, I don't know. I will say everyone has been a teenager. Whether you have a teenager or not, you have been a teenager. And if you can think about having been a teenager and you wanted something your way, you were not going to be nice about it. You were going to be that little gripey, sometimes sarcastic, very difficult version of yourself that wanted the way you wanted it. And you were going to do what you had to do to get it to happen. That's what's happening with your subconscious mind. It's doing what it has to do. And sometimes it's not comfortable or good. It can be those uncomfortable things that happen.
Wow. I mean, wow. I do a lot of work with veterans, men's groups, things like that. And one of the things that I think has kind of come out is that a lot of these guys that are suffering now, and PTSD type things are actually suffering now, of course, because of what happened, but because of what had happened to them prior that, and you use the word predisposed them to have a harder time or to react differently to the things they encountered when they were in the service. Um, and then I've also heard it said that that's almost part of the issue is that when you have that kind of happen earlier, then that again predisposes you to sign up for the service in the first place. So a lot of this almost ends up being like I don't want to use the wrong verbiage, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy is coming to mind. It's like you're set up to go in and a cycle of some kind. You said that you work with veterans and you work with and you said quote PTSD. Is that what the quote was about, or something close to that? Was that there's other things that go into PTSD besides the event?
Yeah, well, I PTSD kind of is like this big bucket that they've thrown so many things into. And when somebody's experiencing these things, they'll say, "Oh, you have PTSD." And it's not as much now, but for a long time, that was quite the scarlet letter. That was quite the
Mhm.
thing that if you were labeled with PTSD, it caused issues in the military, caused issues in your life. You didn't want that label. And I think labels are kind of there. They're great for helping you to try to understand what's going on, because when you have stuff going on and you don't get it, you're like, what is wrong with me? Am I crazy? What's happening that I'm lashing out or I'm doing this or whatever? So when someone comes in and gives you a diagnosis, it's like, okay, all right, I have that. But then it's up to you to decide, do I live in that diagnosis or do I move beyond that diagnosis? Unfortunately, too many people live in the diagnosis and they function around that instead of going, how do I get rid of the symptoms that have caused that diagnosis, which is absolutely possible. Because if someone comes in and they get rid of, I mean, let's say they have IBS and they come in and everything straightens out and everything gets normal and everything goes along, you're no longer going to say, I have IBS, right? So it's not something that you have to be stuck with for the rest of your life. People will tell you, this is how you are, this is what you have to learn to live with it. You do not. You do not. I had a very good um, conversation with someone, a gentleman who was diagnosed with OCD. And he was in these groups for OCD and all of these things. But he was really trying to get himself better. And every time he said, every time I would go in there and say, gosh, I'm feeling better and I'm doing this and it's really working and these things are happening in my life, it was like the crabs in the bucket. They would come in and go, well, yes, but don't have your expectations too high. You're always going to have this. You have to learn to deal with that. Don't try to think, don't try to be in fairyland and say you don't have it. And that's not right. That's not okay. It
Mhm.
just frustrates me that they do that. He was someone who got into hypnosis and was able to clear that. And he said I had to leave the groups because they just kept telling me you are here. And he's like, no, I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to stay in that bucket. And he found his way out. And I think that unfortunately, because people want to feel connected and feel like, oh, I'm not the only person in the world. I've been there. I've been there. I've had my own stuff. And I didn't want to feel alone either. But I also don't want to stay in that space of misery and difficulty and thinking I'm never going to be healed. Because you can be healed. You can be
Mhm.
okay. You don't have to live the way you're living. That's my purpose right there. You asked me a little while ago, is to
Yeah.
get people to know they are not too broken and they do not have to just live with it. That's my purpose.
I mean, there should be a mic drop at the end of that. That's beautiful. That's fantastic. The way you said it and everything. The lead up was great. No, I do. Like I said, I listened to some of your podcasts. One of the things that I heard that struck a chord was you were talking about how this sort of thing can't be done to somebody who doesn't want it done to them, type of thing. That there's an acceptance, a permission, I think is what you called it. Can you talk to that a little bit? Because I know that just in terms of in speaking with the men that I speak with on a lot of different occasions, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves, and that's always sort of the axiom that we live and die with. But you were very definite about that, and so how does that work in your field?
Yes, I had someone that I trained with at one point tell me only work with the willing, only work with the willing. Because if someone comes to you and they're like, well, I have to do this or but they don't want they don't I don't care if they don't believe, but if they don't want to engage in it, then it's not going to happen. And one of the things, yeah, we talked about the stage hypnosis and the things there, and people will come in, I don't want to cluck like a chicken, or I don't want to be
Right.
singing tunes or anything like that. But The thing that they don't remember oftentimes is that those people getting up on stage gave permission. They gave permission to allow whatever was going to happen to happen. They were okay with it. But if you're not okay with it, it's not going to happen. You and your subconscious and all of that is in charge of you. And if you are not ready to say, I really need help, I really need change, then find a way to get yourself ready so that you can go, I really don't want to live with this anymore. I really don't want to do this. And, or even just, I really want to make some good changes. I want to be prepared for the change process I'm coming into. And when you want that and you want the change, you're in giving permission. Will there maybe be some roadblocks along the way that we have to work through together? Sure. Sure, of course. Might just flow easily. Might just be like, oh my goodness, yes, everything is good and I'm ready to move forward. And that's one of the things that people get worried about is I'm going to go in and take control of their mind. I don't want control of their mind. I got to kind of manage my own. That's enough. Sometimes I'm not even sure I'm there with my own, but it's not up to me. I'm kind of like a tour guide. As someone called me a tour guide Barbie once, I'm just taking you for the ride. I'm just showing you the way. And I am connecting you with that part of you that you need to have the conversation with, that you need to come to terms with, that you need to clear, help, whatever it is that you need to do together. I get to help facilitate that. So I'm kind of the facilitator, I guess. But it's like, you can't, what do they say? You can't drag a horse. You can drag a horse however, you can't make him drink.
Right.
I can probably get you there, but if you're gonna fight it the whole time, you're not gonna get the benefit of what's there. If you want to be, and it's okay if you're like nervous about the process. That's not what I'm talking about. Everyone gets a little nervous about the process. They don't know what to expect. I usually have a really great, easy first session that we do together so that you get through it and you go, oh, that was okay. That wasn't so, after it. And you can't do it wrong. People are worried too that, well, what if I kind of don't go out? Or what if my mind drifts? Or what if I fall asleep? Or what if any of it? You can't do it wrong in with me. There are people that stay with me the whole time that I go through the process, through the whole thing that we do. There are people that fade in and out and kind of drift, and maybe they do kind of have some thoughts that take them off into wherever. There are people that just go out, don't remember anything. And for me, I've had people fall asleep. I'm okay with that. Some people don't want that because of the work that they do, but the work that I do, I'm okay with that. I don't care if you fall asleep, it's still going to work. I'm still talking to the subconscious. Your body's still breathing. You're still doing all the things. Your subconscious is still there. So that's okay. So you can't do it wrong. That's another thing that people get worried about. But
You can't do it wrong. I mean, just that right there is something I don't think I've ever heard before. So, and that's because it's so individual that you can't do it wrong.
yeah, yeah, because and people will ask me sometimes, they'll say, well, what can I expect or what can I expect to feel afterwards? And I have to tell them, I don't know. Everyone is different. And actually, sometimes every session can be different for you, depending on what that session is about, what's going on. I don't know how you're going to feel after. I can give you an idea of what a lot of people feel, that they come out feeling like a little bit like, oh, maybe I got so relaxed and my body kind of feels a little wonky or a little bit of just kind of I got to get it moving again type thing or a little drifty. Sometimes people will come out. Sometimes people just want to kind of go and fall asleep afterwards and then they'll sleep, wake up, feel good, go on their day. So it's
Wow.
so different.
So now, is this your own practice that you're conducting at this point in your life? What in terms of your business? I know you have the podcast. Tell everybody about your practice and everything else that it entails.
Yes, I do. I actually do all my work on Zoom, which is
Okay.
super fun. I love doing that. I've done a few sessions in person locally, it can be fun too, but I really love doing it on Zoom. One of the reasons is because people often feel more relaxed in their own space. Sometimes if they've got a lot going on at home, I do ask, find some place where you can be quiet and calm. And if you need to go someplace else, I understand that. But we do it in a spot where they can, maybe it's on their own bed, where they just lay back and they let go and they feel safe and comfortable and okay. And so that's a really good place for them to be as safe and comfortable as they can be. I mean, someone who's having, hypervigilance, anxiety, panic attacks, they might not ever feel that, but I get them in a space and then we do that session. My sessions are sometimes a little longer than some people's might be because this is an opportunity for people who don't relax to relax, to let go. The people like you're talking about, veterans, first responders, but even people, who just maybe they've had a hard time and they have anxiety on a normal basis, or they have anger regularly, or they have something going on. They don't normally get into a really relaxed state. They often have sleep issues. They often have, just where they're up here in the energy way high, way high, way high. And so the work that I do allows them, if nothing else, to come into a relaxed state. Because I am keeping, by what I'm doing, I'm kind of keeping their conscious brain. It does get bored and it goes out of it's like, oh, what about that laundry list what about this? What about, and then they got to bring it back. Oh, I'm supposed to be relaxing, and they come in but I do it for a period of time that allows them to get into that relaxed state. And some people just with that feel different, just with going into a relaxed state. That's amazing to me and relaxation does change everything. It allows your whole system to just go, oh, I'm okay. I can be okay. And when you feel that, oh my goodness, that is such a change because that is one of the biggest changes I think people who I work with come to. They will come to a point where they feel this thing that kind of runs through the center of them, centering, a grounding, a calmness that all the things around them are still going on. Things that normally would have spent them into a tailspin or down the road of worst case scenario. Now they look at it and go, I'm not too happy about that, but okay, let's work it out. Let's figure it out. They go into a place of not panic, not frustration, not, I'm going to be a bag lady. Everything's going to fall apart. Doomsday. They don't go into the doomsday. They maintain that place of, I'm okay. Whatever's happening around me is happening.
Wow.
That right there is like, I think how we're always supposed to live. I never want to take away anyone's emotions, natural reactions, anything like that. Because you're meant to have anger. You're meant to have a little bit of anxiety now and then, a little bit of frustration, a little bit of everything, but you're not meant to stay in it. It's like that roller coaster, it keeps momentum and it keeps moving and it does dip down, but it comes back up. So you might have some depression now and then, but you come up out of it. We're human beings. We're meant to experience the realm of emotions that are out there. But if you're stuck, get some help getting out. It's always okay to ask for help. Get yourself out of it. So that's how I work. I work online with people. We go through sessions. The way that I do it, and I've been playing with it in all kinds of different ways. I mentioned earlier, a 6 to 7 week program that I do. That's one of the most common because people love to have the kind of week in between to process things, to allow things. But I also do where we shorten those, where I have like a 3 session program. It's just a little bit longer. It's a couple hours instead of maybe an hour, hour and a half, whatever it goes into. And actually, I've done them in two half-day programs and a full-day program. That's really intense. That's a lot. You have to be prepared for that. That's like 8 hours
Wow.
of
Yeah.
with me. And so, of course, you better like me if you're going to sit down for 8 hours with me and appreciate my voice and all those wonderful things. But so I really work with the person to fit what their needs are. I don't do single sessions. That's the only thing that I don't do unless you've gone through the program with me. I do single sessions in my woo world where I do astrology readings and I do intuitive sessions and I do those things. I absolutely will do those. But in the hypnosis world, I think it's important that we anchor into and get that full process in place so that we've kind of come at everything at all the angles so that if you are still experiencing something, then I can know how to tweak it a little bit. Where do we need to focus? What do we need to do? One of the wonderful things that I do too is through that process, we're not just pulling out the weed, going down, digging in and kind of pulling out the weed at the roots so that nothing else can grow from it, which is the work that I do. But we might sprinkle in some things that you want to turn up, that you want to add in: confidence, clarity, motivation, energy. We get to add those things in with hypnosis too. That's the fun part. It's all fun, but I love being able to not just clear things, but add in some of the things that you really want to boost in your life. Who doesn't want to boost?
True. Very true. Goodness gracious. I could certainly use a boost. But it bothers me a little bit, to be honest with you, as I'm sitting here listening to you, that you seem to be talking about me an awful lot. Because I can't remember the last time I actually relaxed. But wow. I mean, just hearing you describe it makes you want to, give it a shot. It's like, wow, what would that be like? Total relaxation. Foreign concept. Not sure I know what it means. Wow. So
Right.
the with everything that you do, the podcast then, is it to bring awareness to the process to other things that you do? Do you educate in the podcast? I know you don't actually practice some sort of hypnosis through the podcast, so how do you utilize your podcast for what you're trying to do?
I do share. I do share and try to educate and take away the myths and talk about all the different ways. And I've talked with a lot of different hypnotists. We talked before about how often I do my show. And when I originally came into it, I was talking more about the woo world and some of those things and the practicalities of things. And when I really brought in hypnosis and started talking about that, one of those focuses was on hypnosis and in trauma, especially trauma in whatever way it is experienced, whatever way it's labeled. Some people, they have chronic fatigue. That's trauma. They might have migraines. Actually, that's kind of trauma. So there's a lot of things out there that those labels don't tell you can be related to some things that are going on in life. But one of the things that I do on the podcast is I had these conversations with all of these different hypnotists as well, who specialize in different ways. So I work a particular way. I love adding in certain things that are influenced in my world. But other people, there's people who really focus on gut health who use hypnosis. There's people who focus on weight issues and the work that they do with that. There's people who focus on other things like oh goodness, I can't think of what it's called right now, but they use different ways of working in hypnosis to get you where you need to be. They specialize. Some people specialize in stop smoking, some people specialize in all these different things. And I talk to a lot of people who work within trauma and the deep levels of going in and change, but they all have their own little um, extra pin that they put into it. And so I want people to know you don't just have to go to me or you don't just have to go to this person. If you're really struggling with something that you want to work on, find the person out there that has that connection for you. There's way more woo people. They work in spiritual hypnosis. They work in past life regression. They work in what some people call quantum hypnosis. There's a lot of different versions of the things that are out there. And so I do want to educate people in that and offer them kind of a little bit of information so that when they do hear it, they connect and go, oh, that's a little bit of what I want to know. And they can either come to me or they can come to the person I talked to, if that's what it was, and they can say, hey, I want to talk to you. they can always come to me and say, do you know anyone that specializes here or does this or works in this area? Absolutely, I will talk with them about that. So I do want to educate. I want to encourage. I want to have some fun. Sometimes I put little meditations out there. You're right. I haven't done full-on hypnosis ones, but I have put little quote unquote meditations that
Okay.
are out there. And I have a couple of free things out there that offer that as well. But I think it's incredible to step into the world that we live in and talk to the people that are out there. If I'm even a little bit curious about something, somebody else is too. And so if I can put that out there and say, gosh, I didn't know this is how this worked. Tell me a little bit more about it. Then I know there's someone else out there that needs to know a little bit more about it too. And sometimes I do just hop on and say, gosh, I was thinking about this week. One of the ones I did recently was about pain and how hypnosis can help pain. And so it was 10, 15 minutes, something like that. But it was some thoughts that I had going on. And again, people don't know that hypnosis can be really helpful in pain. And I did go on and say, here's how it can be helpful, and here's why. It does take you into a relaxed state. It changes the way that your body is experiencing the moment. You can draw out the parts that are feeling good and right and kind of overflow the parts that are hurting. There's things that are going on in your mind that you can shift because sometimes I was just talking to someone the other day who is dealing with pain, and she said, I would think about, oh, I have to do this. How am I going to manage that? Because anytime I sit down, there's pain. And so she was already projecting into the future. There was going to be pain in her day. And so we need to stop the
Mhm.
wheels from going down that path. Let's stop that. Let's reel it back in and go, okay, I want to go down this path instead. I want to stay in this better place. I'm going to stay in a place that I'm going to listen to my body. If I do need to get up because it's too painful, I can excuse myself from the table for a minute. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm not getting into the space of, oh no. So that makes sense? Does that make sense? Did I answer? I hope I answered your question.
It makes very good sense. I'm a little blown away right now. I love everything I'm hearing. It's and I love the way you tell it. So I can see how you're successful at what you do. You definitely have a voice that's easy to listen to.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I,
you.
I just have to make sure I'm not getting hypnotized over on the other side of the mic here and kind of I don't want to fall into a state of relaxation and forget to ask you a question or anything. So wow. Okay. That's just magnificent. In terms of the podcasting portion of what you do, because we do have a lot of podcasters who listen to this, oddly enough. But uh, when you got into it, when you first got into podcasting, now you had already been doing your field quite a while before you got into podcasting. You'd
I
been
was
in your
what?
field. You had been in your field for a
Yes.
long time before you got there. So, um, what was it like to transfer what you were doing on a daily basis into the podcasting world? Did you have any obstacles to overcome in terms of the medium of podcasting and getting your message out there, and how did that work for you when you first started?
Um, it was scary as heck. I
Really?
didn't know anything that I had no idea how to do any of it. I I I just was talking with someone at one point, and it was someone I had connected with, and he did a lot of audio stuff and things like that. And he said, we should start a podcast. Yeah, that would be great. But as so often happens, I thought that would be wonderful. And I kind of kept connecting with him, but he was too busy and he was this and he didn't have time. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. And so, not knowing anything at all, I think I had messaged him at one point and said, "Ooh, wouldn't this be a fun name?" And I just thought it would be because we're talking about change and how to do all that. And so I came up with that. And he's like, oh, yeah, that would be so fun. And again, didn't get anywhere. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this. And so I stepped in. YouTube, hello, YouTube. Uh, went to YouTube, find out, went to social media to ask, what are some good places to go to try and start this? How do I do this? Found a couple podcast groups to be able to ask questions in, listen to some podcasts about podcasting. And started on my way and was frustrated as heck moving through some of the technology of it. didn't know what I was doing, didn't have a clue how to do anything. And so, like everything else, I jumped off the cliff. I put it out there. I was so excited when somebody actually listened, or even two people listen. I was so excited that it didn't matter if that was all that was out there was a couple people. I didn't have a big push out. I didn't know you should do that. I didn't know any of it. I just started talking and figured out a way to put it out there. And I'm sure that there are still better ways to do, and there's settings that I don't know about, and there's all these things. I learn a little bit as I go. I learn more, I do these things. And but for whatever reason, I made it a point that that was something I was going to do, and I was going to stick with it because they say most of the time it doesn't, you're not successful in it because you give up.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'm just going to keep putting it out there. And it's kind of slowly grown and grown. And it's not, in the top 10 or anything like that, but it's still out there. And if people want to go find it and they want to find information, I hope they can.
That's great. There is no better way to start a podcast than to simply start talking. So that's perfect. All right. In the interest of time, I just I could ask you questions about this stuff all day because it's fascinating to me. But I always ask somebody my corny question. Okay, and so here comes the corny question I warned you about at the beginning of the episode. What do you love the most about what you're doing and what you're doing through podcasting? Okay, and I know it's a strong word, but what do you hate or dislike the most about the podcast portion of what it is you're doing?
The thing I hate, I'm going to go with the thing I hate first. The thing I hate, I think, is sometimes the frustration of maybe not having it out there as much as I want to, but also the commitment. The commitment can be hard sometimes. The consistency of it. I do everything myself. So I do everything. And so sometimes that I do hate that. I do hating sitting down and going, oh, I have to go do this, and the pressure of it, all that fun stuff. So that's kind of on the hate thing is not the fun parts of it, not having it just appear and be wonderful and doing all that magnificent, everybody loving it. But the things that I do love about it is that I do get to share uh, things that I think are important in the world. Everybody wants to have a voice. I don't care who you are. Even if you're the most introverted person in the world, you inside of you, there's a piece of you that wants to have a say, that wants to have something in the world that you get to put out there that you just do. Some people say,
Mhm.
no, no, I don't. That's not true. There's something deep down inside you that wants to share the information. You have someone that you want to share an experience with. And I get to do that. I get to talk about the things that I love, the things that I find fascinating. Sometimes the things that are like, I don't get it, but talk to me about it so that I can get it. And I am a talker. And so I love being able to do that part of it and experience and meet some of the most incredible people that I have met and stayed in contact with who bring value to my life. Just by having a conversation with me, I have learned so much. Just like you sit here and go, wow, I didn't know that. All right. I get that experience in podcasting because I get to talk to people who are not sometimes in my everyday world. How cool is that? That I get to learn and expand. And just by that expansion, it expands again. We all expand in ways when we walk in and we're like, oh, this is something new. It's like walking into a big convention. And then you look around the convention and you're drawn over here and they go, ooh, there's more right here. And then you walk in and there's this whole other giant room, and now you're expanding even more. I love it. I love it. And that's what happens through connecting in the podcast world. That's what I get from it.
This is why I keep asking the corny question because I keep getting such awesome answers to it all the time. That was great, and I have to say, you do a really good job with your analogies.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, your analogies are very well like put together and used and timed, and I appreciate the craft. That's very good. All right, all right. One last question. The especially for somebody like you who has, and I mean, at 173 episodes, you're considered accomplished in this field. So again, congratulations, because that's something that a lot of people attain, hope to attain one day. So it's unique to have somebody who has that many episodes answering this question, and I love it. For a newer podcaster, or for someone who's you know not necessarily brand new but is newer, they're in their first 50 episodes, they're getting it all together, they're trying to find their feet, so on and so forth. What's the one piece of advice, like the best advice you can give them to become a successful, not rich, but a successful podcaster?
You probably get it a lot, but do the thing that you want to do that interests you. Because if you don't do that, if you try to step into it because you think it's something that someone else wants, you're going to get bored. You're not going to find the connections that you want, and you're going to quit. So do the thing, even if it shifts and change. Mine has shifted and changed, over time. I'm okay with that because I've changed over time. So allow yourself to step into the thing that you want to put out in the world. It's okay. And it's okay if it's broad, it's okay if it's niched, it's okay if it's whatever it is. Step into it, play with it, have fun with it. Take on the adventure. And that adventure will take you into the places, just like I said, that are going to expand and move you in a direction that allows you to still have fun with it. If I didn't still have that much fun with it, if I didn't still find those new doors opening in all the directions, it would weigh heavier on me and it would become not worth it. So allow it to be worth it in your life, and ask questions and explore and do all the things, because it's okay if you don't get it right all the way along. It's okay if you need to change something along the way. That's okay. Whether that is in technology, in the thought process that you have, in the direction that you're going, change is always okay. Ha, take that right back to the Change Game podcast. Change is always good and right and okay. And that is a meaningful thing for you to do. You're not locked in for life in the one thing that you're doing when you start. You can change.
Your analogies are good, and your segue was second to none. That was just amazing. So, I love it. I love it. Listen, I'm sure people are listening to this, and if it hasn't opened your eyes yet, then you need to go back and listen to it again. But anybody who wants to reach out to you, listen to your podcast, connect with you, possibly talk about your process. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Probably it's all kind of captured on my website, which is under my name, and my name is Laura Ordile. It's Lauraordile. It looks like Ordile, but it's Laura Ordile. Married into the name I've lived up to all my life. So I get to be that ordeal now, but it's lauraordile.com. And I'm all over the socials on Laura Ordile as well. And of course, the Change Gang is all over the place. It's on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube, Amazon, all those fun places.
Beautiful. And that stuff will be in the show notes. But, I always like to have you tell everybody in case somebody's driving down the road and they just want to hear it and they don't want to write anything down. They're going to plug it their phone right now. So that's beautiful. Laura, this has been more than enlightening and an unbelievable pleasure. So thank you very much for coming on the show today and just putting yourself and everything that you work on out there for everybody to experience.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I enjoyed the conversation, Rory. It was super fun.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, you have heard another episode of The Podcaster Nation, another incredible podcaster on here. If you are a podcaster and you have not contacted us yet, give us a holler, send us a message. We're easy to find. It's all in the show notes too. Uh, Contact us. We want to interview you. We want to have you on here. We want to talk about who you are and what you do and what your show is. So make sure that you get on here, folks. Remember, and this is really important, this is the show. This is the community among podcasters where the rising tide raises all ships. So keep sailing. Talk to you soon.